You would think, duh, Disney Plus is going to be a smash hit, but it wasn't a known thing yet.
We beat our first year model, our first year projection in day one. That's how bad we were at the model. So when you say it seemed duh, it was going to work, we had a certain number of subscribers in year one that we surpassed in day one. But there are some Disney movies that are played multiple times a day in households.
In the same house.
No doubt about it. In the same house.
Yeah, we watched Frozen 2.5 times yesterday.
Thank you. No proprietary information shared here. The business was progressing like I've never seen before in my life. Not at Credit Suisse, not at Morgan Stanley, not at Merrill Lynch, not at Thomson Reuters. The talent that Disney could attract, because some people are so into Disney, taught me the other element of art and science.
You took Grindr public, and it's arguably the most successful SPAC and is one of the most efficient companies from a metric standpoint across like any category out there.
I mean, the margins are incredible. 43% margin is what we've had. There's zero CAC, so literally zero cost of customer acquisition. It is all word of mouth. Turns out that was my goal to be a public company CFO. You got to have at-bats, and you're not going to have balance in your life with your kids for every year. You're going to have it in some years, and you're not going to have it in every year. I'd say stay in the game. If you want to do it, you will get it done.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Today's guest is Vanna Krantz, former CFO of Grindr and former CFO of Disney Plus. That's a resume that spans streaming empires, social platforms, a SPAC IPO, and some of the most efficient metrics I've ever seen in tech. We start with Disney Plus. Vanna shares what it was like to work within Bob Iger's empire, launch a subscription product with the world watching, and build a financial model for something brand new, where there was no playbook and plenty of pressure. She also talks about forecasting as both science and art, and the kind of leadership moments that stick with you years later, like a head of gross reminder to appreciate the moment even in the chaos of a big launch. Then we turn to Grindr. Vanna took the company public and has helped shape what might be the most efficient business in consumer tech. Rule of 60, 40%, I have to read that again, plus 40% EBITDA margins, sub 200 headcount. It's a case study in doing more with less. She explains what she saw when she first opened up the books, what makes Grindr's model so unique, and how to forecast for a user base that subscribes, unsubscribes, and then comes back reliably again. We also get into what it means to lead at the top. Vanna shares what she tells women navigating leadership and family, what work-life balance looks like in practice, and why her own career didn't just survive midlife, it hit another gear entirely. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. So if you listen to this podcast, you'll know that I am incredibly passionate about the FP&A space because that's the route I went to get to CFO. And I want to tell you about a tool that has exploded over the past few years. It's called Aleph. And I remember getting outbound about them about 2.5 years ago, and I actually took the bait because they claimed to be able to do a demo with my live data, with me right there on the call. And so I had to see it to believe it. And it was the founder running demos back then. Shout out Albert, hope you're listening. And he connected my NetSuite and built my P&L using their Excel add-in in like 15 minutes. And I was really impressed. Since then, Aleph has gone on to raise money from some of the top VCs out there, and they've built an impressive roster of customers. Many of their customers have been on the podcast, like the CFO at Turo, 8 Sleep, and Zapier. They're all really big champions and supporters of Aleph like me. But it's not just an Excel add-in. Aleph also allows finance teams to work with their live cross-system data using Google Sheets and their web app. And that's cool because it gives teams the option to support a wide range of needs and workflows like budgeting, forecasting, and variance analysis. And speaking of variance analysis, they're doing some really cool things with AI-powered variance analysis. It basically allows you to figure out what's going on and why, and it takes the time that you'd usually spend from hours to minutes. It's really cool. And so I highly recommend checking them out and taking them up on that demo or trial, just like I did back in the day. And you can learn more and get started at getaleph.com/run. That is getaleph.com, aleph.com/run. Tell them CJ sent you. A messy or missing cap table might not just slow you down, it could cost you your next fundraising round. VCs get flooded with pitches, and if your equity is confusing or missing, they'll move on fast. Fidelity Private Shares is an all-in-one equity management platform that helps you maintain a clean cap table an organized data room, and a clear equity story. Schedule a demo at fidelityprivateshares.com. Mention Mostly Metrics and get 20% off. You just launched a new AI product. The new pricing page looks great. I'm talking crisp. But behind it, last-minute glued code, messy spreadsheets, and running ad hoc queries to figure out what to bill. Customers get invoices they can't understand. Engineers are chasing billing bugs. Finance can't close the books. Well, with Metronome, you hand it all off to the real-time billing infrastructure that just works. Reliable, flexible, and built to grow with you. They turn raw usage events into accurate invoices, give customers bills they actually understand, and keep every team in sync in real time. Whether you're launching usage-based pricing, managing enterprise contracts, or rolling out new AI services, Metronome does the heavy lifting so you can focus on your product, not your billing. That's why some of the fastest growing companies in the world like OpenAI and Anthropic run their billing on Metronome. Visit metronome.com to learn more. That's metronome.com. Vanna, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
It's my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here.
It was a blast to meet you at that A16Z event in New York City. It's always funny because like most of the podcasts I do, I haven't met the person in real life yet, but like we had a blast that night. We had a lot of laughs, and you actually made fun of me because I ordered a Miller Lite at a really nice restaurant. I just wanted to let listeners know that.
I didn't remember that, but it probably just came right out knowing me. It was a pretty nice restaurant.
It was, yeah, it was on like the 80th floor of some skyscraper. So shame on me, but I stuck to my personal brand.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. I love that. Good. You're authentic.
To the core. And something that's authentic about me is my absolute love for Disney movies and Disney Plus. And so I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one on the way, actually. And so like our house is just like Princess Central at all times of the day.
Oh, so you have 2 girls already.
Yeah, 2 girls already. The third one's going to be a boy, which I think will change up what movies we watch. But I think you have a couple of daughters too, so you must know how that is.
I have girls, yeah. But so you'll have a nicer dynamic than our house is. So that's good.
I want to talk about how you got to Disney Plus. And in particular, I'm assuming at some point during that process, you had to speak with Bob Iger. What was that interview process like?
Oh, so that's an interesting question. So I went for the interview, and when I joined, it was part of Bamtech Media. And Bamtech Media was the streaming for Major League Baseball. And like you just noted, I only have girls. I think I went to 2 Yankees games in my life. I was not super into it. However, I was into the idea of spinning out the streaming side, which is what they were going to do. And during the interview process, I obviously learned that there was a stake from Disney. However, I was not officially told that Disney was purchasing it outright, an early option. So I interviewed with a lovely guy, Michael Paul. And when Michael Paul walked in, I said, my God, I thought Obama was coming for the amount of time that I had to wait. And legit, it broke the ice perfectly because like he laughed, I laughed, but he had a great energy about him. We had a wonderful process. And then I went back and I met a couple other people. And at the end of that, they said, can you just wait a little while to meet this guy, Kevin Mayer, who I have to be honest, I had to look up, which is terrible. But at the time, in my mind, I'm interviewing for Major League Baseball. So I wasn't thinking, who are the players at Disney? So another day, a couple hours waiting for this gentleman, Kevin Mayer. Probably the toughest interview I'd had. And when I say tough, like no nonsense. It was a no nonsense, all business. I like to have a lot of laughs. You just noted it. Like as soon as some stranger, orders a Miller Lite, I'm going to make a joke about it. So that's just who I am. None of those laughs. We went right to it. It went well, obviously. And then that was actually how I got hired. So I never interviewed with Bob Iger. Our primary people that we integrated with was Kevin Mayer and Justin Warbrooke from Burbank. The unusual thing is, as being the CFO, I really didn't report into the finance org at Disney for quite some time. I continued to report into Kevin's org. But Michael Paul and the folks in New York were the primary, I would say, counterparts of everybody around me. So it was a wonderful experience. It was very incubated. Bob Iger did come and talk to us. It was like, 10-ish people at the time. And he said that in his experience, it's best to, when you acquire something, to keep it segregated and let that company do what it was supposed to do. So that's what we did.
I find it so fascinating that you knew you were interviewing for one role, but but like there was a master plan for something bigger behind the scenes.
And when I finally, I was learned, figured out, it was all a combination of innuendo. And I said, they're not going to get somebody from Disney to basically be the CFO for their biggest strategic asset at the time, their biggest initiative. They couldn't get people from California to move to New York City. And I said, no way is there not a guy who's got some girl that he likes in New York and he's going to move. Like in my head, that seemed so like it was going to happen and it didn't. So I've spent enough time in LA to understand why. The weather is really quite something. And the Burbank studio is divine. So I actually do kind of get it now. And at the time, you never knew if Disney Plus was going to be the success that it was going to be. Like, you just don't know.
It's so funny you say that because, like, Monday morning quarterbacking, like, you would think, duh, Disney Plus is going to be a smash hit, but it wasn't a known thing yet. And, like, we were still going through the phase of, like, bundling, unbundling, cord cutters, cord nevers. How do you even, like, step into a role like that and try to forecast the unknown?
Well, for me, I certainly had some hurdles. And the first hurdle was that I'd never done a subscription model before. I had done B2B. I'd worked at Thomson Reuters. I'd worked at Reuters Media, but that was not really in the same regard. That's not really how it made its money in the same way. And so I didn't even know how to do the model. I had to learn it from the people who worked for me. And I learned it from Michael Paul. I mean, what a incredible CEO. You know, when they say a person is like a coach, not a boss, this gentleman taught me how to do the model. So luckily he had done lots of M&A work, so he knew how to do them. He taught me how to do the model. He taught me what KPIs were the most important. He taught me all kinds of things. Then some of the people that worked underneath me, you know, obviously did the Excel. And in the end, that model was very well done by a group of people, and I wouldn't take credit for it. However, what's interesting is you can imagine the scrutiny that model went through. I mean, Kevin Mayer is a very intelligent dude, as is his deputy, Justin Warburg. And if I told you we beat our first year model, our first year projection in day one, that's how bad we were at the model. So when you say it seems it was going to work, we had a certain number of subscribers in year one that we surpassed in day one. That model was just awful. We worked so hard to have to redo the entire model. And then one of the gentlemen that worked for me, at the very, very beginning, it was a free trial for 7 days. He said, we're going to actually show a decline in the first quarter because it's unheard of for people not to churn. So what was amazing about Kevin and Justin was that they were really open-minded and academic, and they use real data to decide whether what you're suggesting could be true or not. They believed it, and they changed some of the roadmap to ensure that that didn't happen. I don't know if you guys remember, but Mandalorian came on before the end of the year.
And that was like a huge pull for people to subscribe back then.
Yeah. Mandalorian came out, I think it was once a week on a certain day of the week. And it was very important to keep the numbers going. People were very addicted to it. Again, that was Michael Paul, who came from Amazon Prime, that said, you need a series that people are really into to get people to stick. It's not like the Disney princesses were not valuable. Of course they were. In fact, I probably can't share it because it's probably still very, very true. But there are some Disney movies that are played multiple times a day in households.
In the same house.
No doubt about it. In the same house.
Yeah, we watched Frozen 2.5 times yesterday.
Thank you. No proprietary information shared here.
Yeah.
Like, this is not just you. So hours watched is important, and the princesses and some of these key, I would call them tentpole movies, were extremely important. But if you wanted to keep families with kids, I would say Disney owned the market very quickly. The penetration of families with kids was incredible within 5 months, but everything else, that requires more work.
It does. And I was actually the first one to get the bundle in our household because at the time our first child was only like 1. And so I wanted the ESPN Plus bundle. And then I think there was also Hulu along with it. So there's this interesting attach rate that it becomes like multi-dimensional chess to try to forecast this thing.
It was not very easy. That's for sure. And I wouldn't say that I think we got it after a few minutes, meaning it took us a few rounds and we got it. The very interesting thing was, as we rolled out globally in every country, the dynamic of how the subscribers came on and stayed on, and how long it took to get to let's call it your target penetration, was extremely consistent. That is interesting. If you compare it to like the dating apps, I'd say the curve is the opposite. Like Disney it will just take over immediately. You could probably know in the first 14 days what your subscribers will be in that country. Generally, I think dating apps, now that I've got different experiences, the curve is kind of literally the opposite. It takes time to get people to convert into paid, just the opposite.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This episode of Run the Numbers is brought to you by Mercury, business banking for founders and finance pros who want their financial stack to actually work together. Now, I don't plug tools I don't know or intimately use. I've been a Mercury customer for a couple of years now. In fact, I showed the Mercury dashboard to their CFO, Daniel Kang, from their finance team right before we hit record on this episode. It felt like a full circle moment. And what I love most is that Mercury isn't just banking, it's operational confidence. I can send a wire to a podcast editor, I can check capital balances, and I can approve a payment for a freelancer who helped me with a tech stack report, all without bouncing across tabs or praying a PDF exported correctly. Mercury's making a bet on builders. Whether you're issuing your first invoice or wiring 7 figures for a warehouse build-out, it's banking that scales with your ambition. Visit Mercury.com to apply online in minutes and see why over 200,000, entrepreneurs choose Mercury to run their business finances smarter. Here comes my banking voice. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group, Column NA, Evolve Bank and Trust, members FDIC. The IO card is issued by Patriot Bank, members FDIC, pursuant to a license from MasterCard. All right, I got to get up on my soapbox for a sec here. Everybody's talking about AI-powered this and automated that. But here's the thing about revenue recognition. It's not just about moving data around. It's about getting it right, full stop. So RightRev is laser focused on one thing, RevRec that auditors actually trust. See, there's a difference between automating revenue processes and automating revenue recognition correctly. RightRev was actually built by the godfather of RevRec, who understands ASC 606 compliance, audit controls, data validation, and the flexibility needed for complex B2B contracts. We're not trying to be your billing system or your ERP. We're the revenue recognition engine that sits between your contracts and your financials, making sure every dollar is recognized correctly, on time, every time. Companies like Snowflake and Logic Monitor don't just need fast revenue reporting, they need revenue reporting that's audit ready from day one. And that's honestly where RightRev shines. And what I love about RightRev is they're not out there trying to be everything to everyone and just slap some, AI slop on top of it. While everyone is building these massive platforms that do everything in a kind of mediocre fashion, RightRev does one thing exceptionally well. They make sure your revenue recognition is bulletproof. Ready to stop gambling with your RevRec? Visit RightRev.com to see how we make complex revenue simple. That's RightRev.com, where revenue recognition actually works. Did you know that around 40% of manually processed invoices contain errors, missing data, bad codes, duplicates? And those mistakes don't just slow your finance team down, they cost you money. That's why global finance automation matters. It's not just about saving time, it's about keeping your business safe from costly errors. And that's exactly what Tipalti does. Tipalti is the serious AP solution for serious business. Tipalti automates the end-to-end payables process, handling everything from onboarding suppliers to global payouts, all so your finance team can breathe again. More than 5,000, of the world's most ambitious businesses already rely on Tipalti to make payments in over 200 countries and 120 currencies. With baked-in security and tax compliance, Tipalti gives you the confidence to scale globally without adding extra finance headcount. Give your finance team their time back. Don't let bad invoices drain good money. Visit Tipalti.com/runthenumbers. Tipalti.com/runthenumbers. Tipalti, serious AP for serious business. That is incredibly fascinating, and I bet you nerded out on the cohort retentions. You have the line and you want it to flatten out. And so I saw one of the worst example is Blue Apron, they would send you recipes and meat in the mail. It basically just kept going down until 0. But then if you look at ChatGPT, it flattens and it actually comes back up. That's what they call a smile curve.
I didn't even have to geek out on it. The guys that were working on this were so into it. The passion was infectious. It was so hard not to geek out onto it because it's just fun. And the truth is, winning is extremely energizing. There's no doubt about it. And I think if you're in finance, you tend to appreciate and enjoy academic rigor. You tend to. And so just fantastic team corroboration across data science and finance and product. You can't, and of course, performance marketing. I can't forget performance marketing. I mean, some of the initial CACs were just incredibly low because you just have to show up in the country and it just works. So it was an extremely exciting time to be there.
Vanna, what did that teach you about where the art versus the sciences in forecasting?
I think the business and finance may not come to a forecast in the same way. I think the business is supposed to be the cheerleader. They have to believe. They want to believe it's believable. I mean, they couldn't be doing what they do if they weren't the biggest cheerleader for something. I think finance comes at things slightly differently, which would be, well, this is what we did in France, and this is what we did in Spain, and this is what we did in the UK. So in Germany, maybe it'll be like this. Oh, there's actually a Disney park in Shanghai, and there's one in Paris. So maybe we should be thinking about it that way, as opposed to, well, everybody in Shanghai is going to want Disney Plus. So I think the art and the science, the balance is listening to your stakeholders. I mean, finance will not be invited and respected and part of the fabric of an organization if they're not listening to the business, but also be, I would say, data-based, where you can help provide the business a better sense of what really is probably going to be closer to reality. Now, of course, at the beginning, the reason our forecasts were so poor was because there was no data. There was just a belief. And I would say at that point, the business also was probably underbelieving, because who doesn't want to over-deliver? That's how I think about art and science. It's more the messaging and the balance. The other place where I feel like there's a tremendous amount of art and science, and there's a gentleman that I think worked at Harry Shavers and then came to Disney Plus, and his ability to depict pictorially how the business was progressing, and I would say patterns, was like I've never seen before in my lifetime. Not at Credit Suisse, not at Morgan Stanley, not at Merrill Lynch, not at Thomson Reuters. I think that the talent that Disney could attract, because some people are so into Disney, taught me the other element of art and science. Here's the science of the numbers. One of the gentlemen said, it's just math. And I'm like, you're right, it's just math. But this other gentleman said, it's just math, but we can make it look like $1 million. And it took a long, long time to get it to look like $1 million and to boil down what I would say the takeaway. Because sometimes when you're in these multi-dimensional businesses with so many things going on, we think about language, we think about where there's a park, how many people had kids, what the penetration of Netflix was. I think you can get lost in a lot of the details, but once there's this crystallization of here's the one takeaway we want to give to the board, the beauty of how you put that together on the slide, I got to give props to Peter Janulis, maybe the person I've learned the most from in my lifetime at work.
I want to pause on that because the messaging feels so important here. The numbers are really just like a character in the story. It's not like the entire plot.
And you can capture the audience, which Disney's all about capturing the audience. Like this gentleman definitely works at the right place because it is all about how the message was delivered. And the reason that I think finance had such a great role in that time when I was there was mostly because we had one gentleman that was fantastic at the math and the science part, and we had the corollary in the beauty element of it. And I definitely use the word excellence and beauty here because we had both pieces. Of course, there's this thing called Beauty and the Beast, though. That word just kind of also comes up. And the word magic, I had never seen the word magic and fairy dust used so much in a corporate America as I have at Disney. And I love it because it's so great.
But what you're getting at, and I can feel the energy, is really respecting your craft.
That is probably why I still do this. I think I love the craft. I think I love being around other folks, whatever their craft is, that also love it. There was, performance marketing, the guys in that team, when they taught me how to think about it and how we ended up showing it to the board. Remember, the board is not going to be, they're typically generalists. They're savvy business people. They're highly respected. They're very successful, but they don't really know necessarily all the details of how a business model might work and certainly something like streaming, which is a little bit, sure, it's a subscription model, but there's always the devil's always in the details. It's always in the finesse. And I think the way that this team put it all together was quite something.
Speaking of putting it all together, what can you say about like stopping to smell the roses along the way? Because you took something from like 0 to 1. I imagine you have to celebrate. Like it wasn't all up and to the right when you're developing this, but you did come out the other side pretty well.
I think people might forget, if you lived in New York City or anywhere on the East Coast, on the day of launch, an error came up and you tried to load Disney Plus. It says, oops, we're still under, because it had a beautiful little cartoon. It was very cute, but it wouldn't load. There was a problem with the CDN and it wouldn't load for about 3 hours. And I remember, everybody had already gone to LA for the big party, meaning, the big dogs, and myself and Brad Wilson, who was the head of performance marketing, we're back in New York, like, doing the work. And I'm like, let's pause it right now. And it's like, it's 5:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning, Pacific time. And I'm thinking, should I call them? And that's a pretty early, like for me, that's like, I don't call my boss at 5:30 in the morning, maybe ever. So we made the call to pause everything on performance marketing and just wait until things got fixed. Obviously, the guys were fixing, just high caliber people working on this stuff, not around the clock. But at the end of the day, you got to give props also. Like I'm telling you, this is an incredible team effort. You got to give props to everybody that was in communications, corporate communications, because the notification that Bob Iger put out of like, he basically said, we got 10 million subscribers in day one. Like that note went out on day one. And part of that was so that was the note. That was the genius of this team. The note was, we got 10 million subscribers, not Disney had a fumble on its first day of Disney Plus where you couldn't load it for the first 3 hours.
The demand is overwhelming.
Yeah, so demand
Literally.
was over. And there literally was a little, but yeah, Brad Wilson stopped everyone at the end of the day and said, I just want everyone to pause, because we tend to work for a lot of years and there's very few moments that we really stop and say, this is going to be a moment I'm going to remember forever. And I have to say, the reason that, because he did that, it is something I remember. That's the part that I remember from the day. The morning fun with Brad on like, let's pause the performance marketing. And then the nighttime of, we got 10 million subscribers, let's all celebrate. So, Disney knows how to celebrate. So in general, I'm sure there was many, many celebrations. I can't remember them all, but that particular one at that moment was very meaningful.
Well, another memory from a different chapter of your illustrious career here, you took Grindr public, and it's arguably the most successful SPAC and is one of the most efficient companies from a metric standpoint across like any category out there. Well, when you were asked to take the company public, Vanna, and you looked at the financials for the first time, what was your reaction?
Oh, so when I looked at the financials, it was with the executive recruiters and it was a deck. And I said, can you guys go back and check these numbers? Like, I feel like there's a typo, because I just come from Disney and the numbers were, the margins are incredible. You've seen some of our numbers. Maybe it's their 43% margin is what we've had. And that's a pretty remarkable margin number in a subscription business. Certainly something I had never seen before. There's 0 CAC. So literally 0 cost of customer acquisition. It is all word of mouth. We now do some brand work. So I don't want to pretend that there's not great brand work being done. There is, but I definitely thought it was a typo. They came back and I'm not even sure who answered it and if I believe them in the end, because I thought even if it was a typo and their digit was off by 1, like there's probably a lot that we could do here. So I never fully believed the engagement time, if I'm honest, but obviously I do now. And I've never fully believed that those margins were able to be sustained, but it's an incredibly durable business. We've been maintaining them for the 12 quarters. We have a structural advantage because there is no performance marketing, and it has incredible global product market fit. And that's the difference. The content remains the same. Content is people on the app. And so when you have global product market fit and there's no real localization, I'm not going to pretend there's not some, but there's no deep localization, like there's no translation services like there is at Disney. It certainly becomes an extremely lucrative business, which is what we find here. The free cash flow generation is a beautiful thing.
When I was interviewing for my first CFO role at a much, much, much smaller company, but it had a marketplace business model, which has some of the characteristics of a social network in a way, no inventory. And I remember I asked the CEO, like, hey, before I sign up to this, can you just like give me the financials? Because like I got to make sure that I'm signing up for something that's like a going concern. And when he sent it to me, it was a similar dynamic. Like CAC was 0. And I said, hey, founder who has no idea how to use QuickBooks, like you sent me the wrong shit. And he's like, no, we've spent like $40 in 5 years on marketing. And that, like, for me was like, okay, even if he was off by 10 or 100, like, who cares? This is like the type of durable business you want to underwrite personally.
They're not everywhere, but they're around.
Well, they're definitely not everywhere. And you have plus 20% revenue growth and plus 40% EBITDA margins. You're a rule of 60 company. And if I have this right, are you doing that with under 200 employees? Like, what's the secret sauce to this type of business model?
So you do have the numbers right. And I'd say I gave you a little hint with respect to global product market fit. And it is a global company. I mean, if you look at the 10K, you'll see that the revenues are not equally split, but there is a significant portion of revenues, almost 40%, that are international. So it's not like all the money's just made here in America. It's made everywhere. Most companies that I'm aware of, the vast majority of the revenue is made in like 10 places or less. So that is also the dynamic here. I'd say I'd be surprised, and it's not in our model right now, if we weren't able to maintain these KPIs going forward because of the global product market fit. I'd be surprised. So yes, it's a beautiful business.
Part of it is predicated actually in the App Store, which makes it even more impressive. How does that impact how you think about monetization?
Well, the App Store is our friend for this business particularly. We don't have internal commerce system, and that means everything goes through Apple or Google. Now, they are responsible and do their part on making sure that minors are kept off the platform, which is extremely important to us. We also have our own controls, so it's not that we are 100% reliant, but it's nice to have the two-factor validation. Of course, there's a lot more talk about not using the app stores with a lot of subscription companies now, and that could be in our roadmap, and I think we've said it probably is in our roadmap, but it's on our highest priority right now. There's just so many organic business ideas that we're focused on first before we tackle the commerce system. The other thing about dating apps that might be a little different than what I'm used to at streaming is that the returns or the chargebacks is a little higher percentage. That takes work.
Yeah.
To be managing all of that. So I think for now, the App Store is our friend, and we'll see how things go.
Well, for any CFO out there who gets hit with that question around the App Store and is running a consumer-based application business, that was a beautiful answer. I want to talk about active users, right? So we were speaking to Lily Yang of Strava. I guess I would be a daily user of Strava most days if I'm being healthy. But like, what's your definition of an active user at Grindr?
We actually put out our number of monthly active users. I think we're one of the only dating apps that does that, but we had always done it. So we continued to do it when George and I came and joined. So I would say if you're on our app once in the month, you're a monthly active user. And the way the app behavior tends to work is their yearly active users significantly bigger than the monthly active user. And that is because, unlike you at Disney streaming, where you're probably watching Disney probably every month, not everyone is using Grindr monthly. There's a massive reactivation rate. So there's lots of people that come in and out of this process. I guess, I'm not part of the community. It's hard for me to say why or why not that dynamic works. I'm not sure, but I do know that for us, our yearly active users are significantly higher than our monthly active users. And our monthly active users, if you open up the app and use it once in the month, you are by definition a monthly active user. And we actually call you a monthly active user, but it's a device. It's an individual device that we're counting. So there's no dupes in there.
And to be a super nerd about it, what action do you have to take to be an active user? Just open the app, or do you have to chat with somebody?
You don't have to chat with somebody. You just have to open it.
Cool.
And use it for like longer than, I forgot that, I'm going to get the time limit wrong.
Yeah, but either way, it shows like there probably is some sort of thinking around like what demonstrates value within the application to count them as such. I find these quirks around different consumer apps so fascinating around how like there can be like this large contingency of like reactivations, because to tie it back to what we started the convo with, like there is an art and science to forecasting a model like this. You have this huge user base that is like inconsistently consistent.
That's a great way of putting it. They are inconsistently consistent. That is true. But on the whole, they actually tend to behave, now that we've looked at the data for 3 years, they tend to behave similarly by season.
Isn't that funny?
I mean, I guess it is a coincidence, or it must be more than a coincidence.
I think it just shows that you capture human behavior when the number of people is large enough. But like listeners always, they're probably laughing at me now because they know what example I'm about to give. But like the last business I was at was aftermarket auto parts. And we had this incredible spike in seasonality in sales right when people got their checks from the IRS in the mail. Because like they're like, oh, I just got free money that I didn't have before. I'm going to go get my brake pads fixed. Should have done it 6 months ago. But like these are the types of rhythms of a business that you don't know and you can't forecast unless you live it quarter to quarter.
I like that example. Oh, that's really cute. We noticed that Ramadan actually affects our seasonality. And the reason we know that is because Ramadan actually changes every year. I mean, not by a lot, but I guess it's like the moon and the sun and the stars and stuff. So changes a little bit every year. We can track it. You can see it.
Another funny one is we were talking to the CFO of Intuit, and he was saying that the number of people filing taxes dropped dramatically when HBO's Game of Thrones was airing.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? You're right. This is human behavior. That's a great point.
For those out there who are trying to get smarter on like free versus paid, if I have it right I think like 92% of your users are free, 8%, 10%, give or take a couple percentage points are paid. As a CFO, how do you think about maximizing revenue per user? Is it like one's better than the other? You steer them towards different ones during different seasons? How do you think about that?
That's a great question. Honestly, that's a great question. We think about obviously two aspects of that. For us, I would say it's a true mathematical sentence to say our paid penetration of the 8% has a wicked headwind because our monthly active users, the denominator, continues to grow. We've been showing like 15, 16% growth every quarter on paid users, but that's also because our MAU is actually, so if you try to connect that to our penetration rate, paid penetration rate, you're going to see that because the MAU is growing, so is it it puts a headwind on that. We think about it from a perspective of, we don't have, first of all, we know the numbers at Match, everyone here does. I mean, they give them to you essentially. So there's a lot of room between the 8% and where Match is. We don't need to get anywhere near that to hit our 3-year guidance that we gave at our first investor day. I think it's natural when we continue to improve our product, and George and the product team have done a phenomenal job of rolling out new features and things that would compel you to want to pay because they're just so good. So that's part of the reason that you would have increased number of paying users, which we've clearly shown. From the ARPU perspective, we basically took a page out of the Disney playbook and said, Disney basically started. So when you probably bought Disney, you probably bought the bundle for, I'm going to bet $10 or something like that, because you could buy Disney Plus for $6.99. I remember that. And that was a very low price. I remember there was a lot of discussion about the price, and that was clearly done in Burbank. And we updated our models once we found out the numbers. But price, I mean, taking it out of, Iger wanted everyone to be able to have Disney Plus, bottom line. And $6.99 was a price that it would be hard to say that it would be too expensive to get Disney Plus. When I joined Grindr during the interview process, I thought, wow, this is like a pretty expensive entry point of $19.99, which would be the lowest price point. And, people used to compare it to the price of a cocktail. Yeah, you could do that, but people also think about things in terms of subscription payments that they make. So there's lots of ways of thinking about it. There's no right way or wrong way. We decided to try a cheaper entry point of the weekly. So the same proposition of what you got for paid, but at a lower price point of $12.99, but you only got it for a week. What ended up happening, and you could get a monthly for $19.99. What ended up happening was that we got incredible demand for more paying users, and they tended to renew. So that ended up that we got more paying users and more ARPU. So we kind of firing on both cylinders. Now we're thinking about continuing to be, let's say, more thoughtful about our international localization and presence. So that could bring down our ARPU over time, because if you get a lot more users in India or Latin America, those ARPUs tend to be lower globally for any subscription business. But in America, if you are able to offer and be successful at different AI components that would drive potentially higher premium tiers, then that could offset that. So the way we think about it is just offering more and more value to our users, let them decide what price point and what features are most valuable to them. And I think in the end, we're just looking for continued revenue growth, like we put in our 3-year model of 20 to 25%. Any way we can get it.
That's a great explanation. And it's fascinating how even at scale, you can be a victim of your own success in the sense that you bring on more and more users. You're increasing the denominator that's weighted against you.
Yeah. See, honestly, it's very true. And even lapping, so if we're doing it for 12 quarters, we have lapped for years now that 20 to 25% revenue growth. That gets harder and harder with the law of numbers.
So Vanna, if we were writing a book here, you have a number of really compelling chapters. I want to talk about just the concept of getting to the top. I was doing a quick search the other day. If you look at the public company CFOs that are female, I'm pretty sure it's under 15%. What do you tell women when they ask for tips to getting to the top, especially for someone who has kids too?
So I definitely don't feel like I'm at the top, for the record. I think there's still another chapter, but I'm happy to be part of the club and grateful to George and Ray and Michael and the board for allowing me the opportunity to join the club. Let's start there. But in terms of staying in the game, that was probably the most key component, because I think it's very hard to write the history of anyone's life at the beginning. And one thing that I think I'm going to remember from this meeting is that you said something like, I can feel the energy and the passion of things when you're talking about it. And I think if you're in an environment where you know that that's where you feel alive, that isn't going to happen in every single job. It's just not.
I've had it and I've not had it at jobs.
Right. And I think that's probably true for the vast majority of people. I think making it through those roles that are not perfection, but still are teaching you lots of things. And I am sure there's always great things about every role. There were some roles where I learned, wow, this is how you interact with, a board that may or may not be the same caliber that you're used to interacting with. And there was a lesson there. And staying in the game is probably the most important part of having a shot to making it. I think one of the recruiters when I was young said that, I guess these recruiters must have incredible CRM system, because one of the recruiters said to me, well, in 2007 when we met, you said that you wanted to be a public company CFO. And I said, really? And they said, apparently you did. So that means that, I don't know if I just said that because I thought I was supposed to say that or not, or if it really was a goal. I don't know. It certainly became a goal while I was at Disney, if it wasn't before, but I guess I did say it before. I think you have to want it, and I think you have to stay in the game. You have to want it, and you have to stay at the game. What do they say? You got to get a lot of at-bats before you can get one. I mean, I went to 2 companies, Masterclass and Passport. Those were at-bats. They were supposed to go public. They didn't go public. It was fine. They were both good experiences. I learned a lot in both of them, but turns out that was my goal, to be a public company CFO. You got to have at-bats, and you're not going to have balance in your life with your kids for every year. You're going to have it in some years, and you're not going to have it in every year, because I think in those moments where you get to experience the incredible energy of a job and a role that the team is working, the business is working, everyone's there to win, there's a lot of excitement. In those roles, it's hard to balance family and your career. But then there's other times where I'd say it's easier.
Do you think work-life balance is a thing?
I'm going to say that I think I had it at certain years of my career, for sure. One of my very comical neighbors said to me, it feels like you're home for every major and minor holiday. And I think what she meant was, I never missed the Halloween parade. I was there for the Thanksgiving meal with all the whatever school activities they were. But at the same time, when I was at Disney, I missed every single thing for 2 years. And I was not sad. I was probably the happiest. When I was 40, I was crying at my desk, and I had just bought this brand new bag, which I thought was just wonderful. And I was crying, and my husband said, pick up that bag and get your butt home. There's no reason to cry. You'll be fine tomorrow. And he's very Canadian, and just thought, you're overreacting. Who cares if it's your birthday? Celebrate on the weekend. I guess. All right. So that's what I did.
There's something to be said, though, that it's never as good or as bad as it seems in the moment.
That's a good one, too. I like that. I think I might say for me, it has been as good.
Well, that's a great outlook.
Maybe I'd say that the good has been very good.
Well, something that you said when we had dinner together was that your career really accelerated after 50. What does that say about the mental timelines that we all place on ourselves when it comes to success?
Hey, man, it takes time. And I think especially in finance, where it's not necessarily viewed negatively to be that gold. I remember when I was at Thomson Reuters, someone said, you're a bit, and I don't think they meant this meanly. It didn't land very well on me, but I don't think they meant it meanly. I think we need the golden retriever type, not the chihuahua. And I thought, wow, all right. And I think maybe with age, you have more elements of the golden retriever. I don't think anyone would describe me as a golden retriever, but well, first of all, I'm also 5 feet tall, so it's probably hard to be described that way. I think as you get older, you get more seasoned. And then when you do reach closer to your pinnacle, you're more prepared for it, and you're able to go back in your elephant memory and basically pull out relevant data points or relevant experiences that can help you be, if not perfect, certainly on the right track. And I think generally we live in a world where people respect others that are trying their best and are coming up with, realistic thoughts or ideas. So when I definitely desperately wanted to go to the Fortune's Most Powerful Women, and so I got to go I desperately wanted to, but I didn't know how to get invited. And I asked someone when I was at Grindr, and so I did get invited, and I get to be a panelist this year, so I'm even happier about that. But I remember when I was there, somebody said that women are in their best decade between 50 and 60. That is when they reach their pinnacle. And I'm not sure if that's true for men. Maybe they're 40 to 50, and maybe it's because women tend to, if they can or if they want to, split their time more with their families. It's hard to say. Maybe things are different now. I'm also not I'm not a new parent. My kids are out of college and working, so maybe things are different now. But I'd say stay in the game. If you want to do it, you will get it done.
What I'm going to take away from this conversation is just the power of compounding. And you can't compound if you take your money out of the bank, It's kind of like if you take yourself out of the game, you can't continue to compound.
And it was never a straight line. Nothing's ever a straight line, which maybe that would be a fallacy to believe it's always a straight line. I grew up in accounting at the beginning, where that is a very straight line kind of profession, I'd say, right? You're a associate, an analyst, a manager, a senior manager. If you can make it to director, executive director, then partner, same thing at the banks. I think in finance at companies, I don't think it's as linear as that. So let's see.
It's great advice. Vanna, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So I'm going to hit you with some questions. The answers don't necessarily need to be short. First one, ask everybody. You're a successful person. Can you think of one thing you've screwed up on the job before? One mistake you've made?
I think might be universally true for a lot of people is their greatest strength is their greatest weakness. And my greatest strength is that I have clarity, crispness. I cut right through to the main event in a moment. Biggest screw up, because I love him and I think he knows I do. Kevin Mayer said something in a meeting, and there's probably 10 people or less in it. And this is a guy who's 50 levels above me, very senior dude. He said something and I laughed and I said, in the last meeting, you said something else. And everyone looked at me and he looked at me and he said, can you say that again without laughing at me? Oh my God. Just I was mortified that I did that, but that was a fairly big screw up. Now, I don't think it ended up having any real impact in my life or anything like that, but I think that's because that's the type of person he was, that he could dish it out and he could take it. But not everyone can take it. I gave you the positive side of that example, but there's probably 50 of those where my mistake was that not everyone is as confident and competent in their craft. And even if they're competent, they may not be as confident. And so if that happens and you get somebody like me, it doesn't always land well. So there's been some mistakes.
But it cuts both ways. And I think you'd 10 out of 10 rather have the person who's willing to say something like that, because there's so many other times where they speak their mind and it's like other people in the room were just too shy to say it and they were all thinking it or something like that. So I can definitely empathize with you there.
I think you have to make sure you're working in the right environment where that is wanted.
Totally. Next one I got for you. If you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell her?
Yeah, I don't think that much about myself like that. I mean, I think I'm sadly, I think I'm a a hamster wheel type of person and I don't think too hard. I just go through the motions of life. That's why when Brad Wilson said, let's just stop and all like celebrate this, like it was so meaningful to me because I think I was running until I was like 50. Maybe not successfully, maybe not in the right direction, but I was doing something that I thought was right. I'm actually not that hard on myself.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just not.
Next one I got for you, more of a technical question. What tools does your team use to get the job done today? What's your finance tech stack look like?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you know what ERP you're on?
We're on Oracle.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Expenses?
We don't.
Do you use like a Brex or something like that?
Everything. We have all the modules for Oracle. We're driving around in a Ferrari.
Wow.
We really are.
Souped up.
I'm not sure if that was a decision made before I joined. And I think, that's part of what comes with a 43% margin business.
There we go. That keys to success, everybody, right there. Last one I got for you. In all your years in a finance seat, what's the craziest thing anyone's ever tried to expense?
A full-on spa day for the whole team flown to London from New York City.
Ooh.
They didn't work at the company after that.
So they also flew them to another continent and then gave them a spa day?
2 day.
2-day retreat. Hope some annual planning was done.
It wasn't in finance, obviously. Finance people would never do that. We're too busy. We're just way too busy.
Way too busy. Vanna, this has been an absolute blast. You've quickly become one of my favorite CFOs to talk to. I really appreciate you carving out time because I know how busy you are.
Yeah, no, that was great. I really enjoyed it too. I really did.
Run the Numbers is a mostly media production. Yelling and intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by Meg D'Alessandro. Show is executive produced by Ben Hillman. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog way too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses. LOL. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe and give us 5 stars. It will take like 2 seconds and our algorithm overlords love it. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day. Peace.